Have you ever loved someone and said nothing? You sit across from them, maybe in a quiet room or in the middle of laughter with friends. Your heart feels loud, almost too loud, yet your mouth stays silent. You notice the small things about them. The way their voice softens when they talk about something they care about. The way their eyes search a room. And somewhere inside you, a feeling grows. But instead of reaching out, you hide it. You convinced yourself it's safer this way. It's safer to stay quiet. It's safer to pretend you don't feel anything at all. Because deep down, there's a fear whispering in the background. What if they don't feel the same? And suddenly love doesn't feel like warmth anymore. It feels like risk. Some people express love easily. They confess their feelings, take emotional risks, and allow themselves to be seen. For them, love is an open door. But for others, love is something that happens quietly behind locked walls. They feel it deeply sometimes, more deeply than anyone around them. Yet when the moment comes to reveal it, something inside them pulls back. A quiet voice says, "Don't say it. Don't show it. Protect yourself." Psychologically, this pattern often comes from a deep fear of rejection. Not the casual kind of rejection most people brush off, but something much deeper, something that feels almost existential. For someone like this, rejection doesn't feel like a simple no. It feels like confirmation of a painful belief that has lived inside them for years. Maybe I am not truly wanted. So instead of risking that pain, they hide their love. They become masters of emotional restraint. They smile, support, and stay close enough to feel the warmth of connection, but never close enough to reveal the truth. From the outside, people might see them as calm, reserved, maybe even mysterious. But inside, they are carrying entire emotional worlds that no one else can see. It's like holding a letter you wrote from the deepest part of your heart and never sending it. The strange thing is that these people are not cold. In fact, they are often the opposite. They are deeply sensitive, deeply loyal, and capable of extraordinary love. But somewhere along the way, they learn that expressing that love might come with a cost too painful to bear. So they bury it, and the love stays hidden, quietly shaping the way they move through the world. This pattern rarely begins in adulthood. It usually begins much earlier. In childhood, imagine a child who learns very early that emotional safety is uncertain. Maybe they expressed their feelings once and were laughed at. Maybe they reached for affection and were met with indifference. Maybe they watched love appear and disappear unpredictably for a child. These moments are not small. They are defining. Children are emotional scientists. Every interaction becomes data about how the world works. And when love is inconsistent or when vulnerability is met with rejection, the child begins forming quiet conclusions. If I show how I feel, I might get hurt. So the child adapts. They become careful with their emotions, observant, hyper-aware of how others react. This is where something psychologists call hypervigilance begins to form. Instead of freely expressing themselves, they start scanning the emotional atmosphere around them. They learn to read subtle cues, the tone of a voice, the shift in someone's eyes, the tiny pause in a conversation. And slowly, something changes. Instead of asking, "What do I feel?" they start asking, "What will make me safe?" Love becomes something to monitor, not something to express. Then adolescence arrives. Crushes happen. Attraction appears. But the old emotional programming is still there. So when they feel something real, something vulnerable, the alarm goes off inside them. Careful, don't risk it. Maybe they almost confess their feelings, but stop themselves at the last second. Maybe they watch someone they love walk away without ever knowing. And each time this happens, the pattern grows stronger. The child inside them learns another quiet lesson. It's safer to hide love than to lose it. Over time, this creates a strange paradox. They crave connection more than most people, yet the very thing they want most is the thing they struggle to reveal. When someone hides their love to avoid rejection, the signs are often subtle. They listen carefully, remember small details, and offer emotional warmth in quiet ways. But when it comes to expressing how they truly feel, something stops them. Sometimes you become the emotional thermostat of the relationship. You constantly monitor the other person's mood, adjusting your behavior to maintain harmony. Your own feelings stay hidden behind a carefully constructed mask. Another sign is overthinking every possible outcome. If you imagine confessing your feelings, your mind instantly jumps to the worst-case scenario. Rejection doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it feels catastrophic, like stepping off an emotional cliff. So instead of risking it, you keep things ambiguous. You stay close enough to maintain the connection, but far enough to protect yourself. You may also notice a strange habit of loving people silently. People might describe you as kind, loyal, and emotionally intelligent. You might find yourself drawn to emotionally unavailable people. You might also struggle with something psychologists call septic. When feelings arise, you downplay them. It's probably nothing. They wouldn't feel the same anyway. Better not ruin the friendship. But deep inside, something aches. Because love that remains unspoken doesn't disappear. It stays inside you, like a silent echo. And sometimes, the hardest part isn't rejection. It's wondering what might have happened if you had simply been brave enough to say the truth. Psychologists have studied this pattern for decades. Research in attachment theory suggests that people who fear rejection often develop what's known as avoidant or anxious attachment styles. These styles shape how we experience closeness and vulnerability in relationships. Studies from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology have shown that individuals with strong rejection sensitivity tend to suppress emotional expression as a protective mechanism. In other words, hiding love is not random behavior. It's a learned survival strategy. The anterior cingulate cortex, often called the brain's pain matrix, lights up when someone experiences social rejection. To the brain, emotional rejection is not abstract. It is real pain. Carl Jung once spoke about the concept of the shadow self, the parts of ourselves we hide because they feel vulnerable or unacceptable. For many people who hide their love, their deepest emotions become part of that shadow. They are still there, still powerful, but pushed out of sight where no one else can reach them. But here's what no one tells you about hiding love. It protects you from rejection, but it also protects you from connection. Every time you silence your feelings, a small part of your authentic self stays buried. Over time, this can create a quiet loneliness that's difficult to explain. From the outside, your life may look full of friendships, conversations, and shared experiences. But inside, something feels missing. Because the version of you that others know isn't the full version. It's the edited version, the safe version. And carrying that emotional mask for years can become exhausting. You start wondering why relationships never feel completely fulfilling, why there's always a sense of distance, even when someone is standing right next to you. The truth is, love requires vulnerability. Not perfect vulnerability, not dramatic declarations, but the simple courage to say, "This is how I feel." When that courage never appears, the heart remains locked behind invisible walls. Psychologists sometimes call this hyper-independence. You convince yourself that you don't need anyone to validate your feelings. That loving silently is enough. But deep down, the buried child inside you still wants something very simple: to be seen, to be chosen, to be loved without hiding. And every time love remains unspoken, that child whispers another painful question: would they have stayed if they knew? But here is the truth that begins the healing process. You are not broken. Your mind learned to protect you the only way it knew how. Silence became your armor. Distance became your safety. But healing begins when you realize that the same strategies that protected you in the past may now be limiting your future. One powerful step forward is shadow work, a concept Carl Jung believed was essential for psychological growth. It means gently exploring the parts of yourself you've hidden, including your capacity to love openly. Another step is reconnecting with your inner child, the younger version of you who first learned that vulnerability might lead to rejection. That child doesn't need criticism. They need reassurance. They need to hear that expressing love is not weakness, it is courage. And slowly, you can begin practicing small acts of emotional honesty, not dramatic confessions, just small moments of authenticity. Let someone know you appreciate them. Share how you feel, even if your voice shakes a little. Each time you do this, the invisible walls begin to soften, and something beautiful starts to happen. Love stops feeling like a threat, and starts feeling like what it was always meant to be: connection. If you are someone who hides your love to avoid rejection, let me tell you something important. Your heart is not fragile because it feels deeply. It is powerful. The world needs people who love with depth, loyalty, and sincerity. But that love deserves to be seen, not hidden, not buried behind fear. You spent years protecting yourself from pain. Now you have the chance to give yourself something else: honesty, courage, and the freedom to be known. Because one day, someone will look at you and say yes. But they can only say yes to the parts of you that you are willing to reveal. At the moment you allow yourself to be seen, love stops being something you hide. It becomes something you finally live.